Hey Cowboys Nation, let's go for another round of news from America's team. Watch until the end so you don't miss any news and sign up to stay tuned for everything that comes out about the Cowboys. Ahead of their NFC East showdown against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys elevated linebacker Rashaan Evans from the practice squad to the active roster on Saturday. The Cowboys signed Evans to provide more depth at linebacker after Leighton Vander Esch was placed on injured reserve with a neck strain. He made his Cowboys debut against the Rams last week, playing 13 snaps on special teams and 7 on defense. The Titans selected Evans with their first-round pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. He was on the Eagles' practice squad last month. Evans has appeared in 76 games during his time with the Titans and Falcons and started 67 of those. For his career, he has 21 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. The Dallas Cowboys are predicted to have a quarterback controversy by season's end. As predicted by Bleacher Report's Brad Gagnon, the Cowboys will have a QB controversy for a brief period of time that will see Dallas give Trey Lance and/or Cooper Rush a shot by season's end. It's inevitable, especially considering the Cowboys' media following and fanbase, writes Gagnon. Dak Prescott is a good but inconsistent quarterback who finds ruts. He'll find one, potentially when Dallas battles Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami and Detroit in a 4-week span in December, giving Trey Lance and/or Cooper Rush a shot, and all hell will break loose. Dak Prescott statistically ranks as one of top quarterbacks. The prediction is quite a bold one by Gagnon. For one, it's hard to envision that panning out right now considering Dallas has a solid record at 5-2 heading into their Week 9 matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. Furthermore, Prescott is coming off of his finest performance of the season in a blowout win over the Los Angeles Rams, posting 304 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to go along with a 133.7 passer rating. For the season, Prescott has posted solid numbers. His 5 interceptions and 2.3% interception rate are in the average ranks among passers. However, his 65.2 quarterback rating ranks 7th among all quarterbacks and his 71.0% completion rate ranks second only behind the Buffalo Bills' Josh Allen. However, as Gagnon notes, he doesn't predict this to happen until the end of the season when the Cowboys face off against those aforementioned 4 opponents, all playoff contenders, between weeks 14 through 17. Why Cowboys benching Dak Prescott is unrealistic. Even with that being the case, it's hard to forecast a scenario where Rush, who only started 5 games last season due to Prescott's injury, or Lance, who is currently slotted as the number 3 QB and hasn't taken a single snap this season, is inserted in the starting lineup due to struggles by Prescott. Especially when one factors in that it would be during the stretch run of the regular season right before the playoffs. Why would the Cowboys bench their franchise quarterback in favor of Rush, who has just 6 career starts, or Lance, who has just 4 career starts, in a Super Bowl or bust season? That's not even mentioning how the Cowboys have repeatedly stressed their desire to re-sign Prescott to a new contract. Benching Prescott for 2 quarterbacks with a combined 10 career starts would all but eliminate that possibility. There very well may end up being a stretch where Prescott struggles against those 4 playoff contenders. If that were to happen, the media would obviously jump on Prescott and criticize the quarterback for his struggles against top-tier opponents. That's nothing now considering that type of criticism happened before the season after Prescott struggled in a playoff loss to the San Francisco 49ers last season. Prescott struggling again could lead to fans and the media clamoring for a quarterback switch to Lance or Rush. But the idea of the Cowboys actually moving through with such a pivotal change at such a key time right before the start of the playoffs is just an unrealistic scenario. After Tuesday's NFL trade deadline passed with no activity from Dallas, owner and general manager Jerry Jones of the Cowboys was widely lampooned for the lack of movement. On Friday, speaking from the Texas Rangers World Series parade, offered a defense of his trade deadline approach. The Cowboys already had their deadline. It just came earlier than most. We've really had our trading deadline. We had our trading deadline before the season started. Jones told the KNC Masterpiece Show on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. "That's why we traded for Stephon Gilmore and that's why we traded for Brandon Cooks. And so I know there's been a lot of talk there lately about trading deadline, but thank goodness, we had the opportunity to get that trading deadline done back before we started the season. That was back in March, of course. Cooks was acquired in a draft pick swap with the Texans on March 19, and Gilmore came via the Colts, for a 5th-round pick 5 days earlier. Multiple Cowboys spots need help." Jerry Jones took heat this week for letting the deadline lapse with no movement from the Cowboys. Sure, the team made trades 7 months ago, but since then, several weak spots have cropped up that could have been addressed by trade. Star corner Trevon Diggs was injured and the secondary needs help. The offensive line, too, needs depth amid a series of injuries. The defensive line has holes. The wide receivers around star CeeDee Lamb, including Cooks, have struggled, and the Cowboys were linked to several star pass catchers. Even starting running back Tony Pollard could use help. The Cowboys were listed as trade deadline losers at multiple sites after Tuesday, including A to Z Sports and C.com. As Cis Gilberto Manzano wrote, "The Cowboys have played well defensively after a few rough weeks adjusting without cornerback Trevon Diggs, who tore his ACL earlier this season. But the Cowboys are in need of offensive line help and another running back to complement Tony Pollard." Jerry Jones. Trade deadline players behind curve. Making matters worse is what the other NFC contenders did ahead of Tuesday's NFL trade deadline. Seattle, Leonard Williams; San Francisco, Chase Young; and Philadelphia, Kevin Byard. Jerry Jones defended the team's relative inactivity by saying those players traded to other teams will have the challenge of learning a new playbook. But because the Cowboys had their trade deadline in March, Jerry Jones said, they don't have that problem. Right now, 1 week after the trading deadline, these guys have been working with quarterbacks, they've been working with schemes, they're ready to go. Guys that were just brought in last week, they've got a nice little curve to get on the same page, he said. As for what was possibly on the table for the Cowboys ahead of the trade deadline, the owner wanted to keep that to himself. When next year's trade deadline comes, he did not want to deter teams from calling, though he put a typical Cowboys Jerry Jones spin on it. "I understand the reason for the question," Jones said. "But really, if you look at it, anything that is talked about or speculated about is as dead as Napoleon. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So it serves no purpose. First of all, it might be a negative in future conversations. And so it serves no purpose. So, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys will move forward with what they have. At least, until the next trade line in March."